Welcome back, everyone. Today we're gonna be looking at just a couple files in the file system. I made the font bigger so that you guys can hopefully see it easier. So as you can see, we got big fonts, big letters. Alright, so we got bin, dev, lib, stuff that we've already seen and kind of talked about lightly in the past videos. One of the ones we haven't talked about yet is like lost and found. And that's just for the physical mounted file system itself. But hold on. It's asking me for some updates. Remind me later, not now. What we're going to be talking about in this video is that each of these directories are used for something specific. And now you can put a lot of things you might want to do only in binary. Not because you can't do them in other places. You might be able to do something in binary that you can also do in dev, in etc, or in mount. But it's kind of like a general rule of thumb, like a ethics of sysadmins, and kind of like, for example, if you're going to be running Ansible playbooks, then you'd be putting in an etc Ansible and then make a directory in there called playbooks, and you might do it that way. You probably wouldn't put your playbooks in dev or in proc or in run. You know, that just doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of like the Linux kernel, the operating system, doesn't give you rules of where you can do something and where you can't. You can kind of do everything everywhere if you figure out a way to do it. But it's like, there is a set of rules that you should follow if you want to be at peace with all the other people that you plan on working with in your engineering roles, to make everything more organized and make everything make more sense. Make sure that your process of work is more organic rather than kind of all over the place. So I hope that makes sense, and let's talk about it. So we're going to talk about all of the most important directories. The ones that you would be using if you're working, the ones that you'd be using if you're a sysadmin or a site reliability engineer, or you're DevOps, or any kind of job that requires you to know Linux and to work with Linux. You will probably get your hands dirty with bin, etc, and a couple other ones, but hold on, let's start off with just bin. Bin is short for binary. Binary shows you all of the binaries. And what are binaries? Well, there's going to be a couple things in here that look familiar. What is a binary. Who is a binary. Where is a binary. WC for word count is a binary. You have view, we got VI, Vim. And as you can see, a lot of these are commands, right? Well, actually, all of them are commands. So a command that you type into the command line, into the terminal, like ls is a binary. So all of these commands are stored in the binary. So all of them are stored in here. Right, so now that we kind of understand what binaries are, let's move on to etc. etc shows us a lot of configurations. And these are configurations for programs that you might have installed. If you have bash installed, like 99% positive that you have bash installed, because that's the default shell that comes with Ubuntu. Here you can find kind of like the configurations of it. If you install something like Ansible or cups or Persona, or that's not Persona, but there's a software called Persona. Here's Perl. There we got Python installed. These are the configurations of, you know, all the applications and software and that's installed in your system. So whenever you install something, or whenever you don't know if something's installed or not, this is the first place where you can check. And this is the first place where you can check where it's set up as well. So, you know, we can check if LDAP is installed. And here we can see LDAP-conf. We can check if SSH is installed. And here it's showing the SSH configuration. So when it comes to troubleshooting, the very first thing that you should do in your troubleshooting process is wonder, is this thing running? And if it is running, how is it configured? And whenever you create configuration for a program, maybe you're making playbooks for Ansible, or maybe you're creating a batch file for keygens for SSH. So going back what I was talking about earlier, when you don't put the right things in the right locations, configurations should always go into etc. You could put them in a different directory, but imagine another person who you work with installed, let's say SSH, and they put the configuration in a different location other than etc, and you're trying to troubleshoot why it's not working and you can't find it, then right there proves my point that you should always be putting configurations and programs into etc. Alright, so moving forward, we go ls root again. So we went over bin, but there's another bin called sbin. Let's list it. Sbin are just terminal commands that you run that you need to be sudo for, that you can't run as a normal user. So like changing a password, changing to root, probably. And sometimes when you install an application, then it will create an S-binary in here if it has binary commands in the software package being installed that needs to be run with sudo. And then it kind of creates like a link in here. And in order to find which ones are those links, we can do ls ahl sbin, and we can see one. So so this command should be showing all of the files, should be showing all of the binaries that are linked to another file, but for some reason it's only showing me one file, so I'm not doing the command right. Hold on, what's happening? Oh, is it capital L? No, it's not. Or do I do this? Yeah, I'll figure this out on a different video, but let's continue with... Alright, let's go and clear this, go ls root. So, another one we should talk about is this glowing green one, Temp, temp. So I've got quite a few things in here, and you might not have anything in here because temp gets deleted every time you restart your machine. So they're temporary. They delete themselves when you restart your machine. But you might go in here sometimes when something's not working and you're troubleshooting, and a lot of times Linux machines, especially in production, they hardly never turn off, and they could be running for even up to a year without restarting. So temp might have a lot of stuff in those machines, and a lot of times these could be like cached logs, stashes, and could even be some bloatware or things that are slowing your system down, causing performance issues. So there's a lot of stuff in here that might be good, might be bad. So if something's not working, temp could be a place to just go and poke around, see if you could find any red flags. Just a note though, a lot of times when a program is running and the program finishes running and maybe stops running, then it should clear out its temporary files that aren't needed anymore. So programs do a little bit of like self-cleaning, but sometimes we still get a bunch of stuff left over. And as a sysadmin, it's your job to figure out what files in here are still running and that you shouldn't touch, because if you touch them, you might break everything that's in production, and what files in here that you can touch and maybe delete to like free up some processing space, free up some processing resources. So now we've talked about a couple of the ones that you're going to be using more often, the more important ones. Now let's talk about the less important ones. And I mean important in terms of like you probably won't work in these on a daily basis, but they're still very important when it comes to Linux actually functioning. So one of them is boot. This is one of those things where you probably won't be touching any of these. Every file in here is required for the boot process of Linux booting up. So whenever you turn on the Linux machine, the kernel is using all this data to begin executing user mode programs and just the overall startup initialization of the operating system. Next up, we have dev, which is device. The device directory, oh, missing the slash. Okay, it's just dev, not device. Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff here. And what are all these things? Well, these are special device files. These files are used for programs to interact with physical devices. So this could be like your CD, maybe like a bus for an audio input, discs, DVD drive, probably like the drivers, your input outputs for your mice and your keyboards, just kind of stuff like that. Next up we have home. Next up we got CD-ROM. That's kind of self-explanatory. It's just the CD read-only memory. So when you put the CD in your computer, that's pretty ancient stuff, man. You're probably never gonna deal with that ever in a career. Then we've got home. Home is your own directory for your user. That's actually where we are now, I think. Yep, we're under home and our user. Next up, we got our libraries. We have lib. We have lib for 32-bit architecture. We have lib for 64-bit architecture, and another lib. These directories contain kernel modules and any shared code that may be used from the C programming library. As we've talked about in previous videos, kernel runs in the language C. Linux kernel runs in the language C. It's all built upon C, and these are just the libraries for the kernel. We've got the media directory. We can go and poke around in there. There's nothing in there. That might be for media that you can, maybe an external hard drive, something. We got mount. Now mount is also the same thing as CD-ROM. When you put a disk in or a floppy disk, it goes to mount. Is a directory reserved for software and add-on packages that are not part of the default installation of the software. So we talked about etc. etc is where all the softwares go when you install them. Opt is kind of just like add-ons and other little bells and whistles that come along with softwares that are kind of like optional. The proc directory contains information about your system and the process it is performing. And this directory is used to dynamically access data. Then we have root. And as you also know, this is root, slash. Slash is the main root. But then we got this other root. So this is root inside root. And so root as a slash has everything inside of it, but root inside root does not have everything inside of it. And as you can see, I get a permission denied. So let's try sudo root. So we only got one thing, and it's snap. Let's see what's inside of it. We don't know what's inside of it. That's because I didn't specify what directory I wanted that. Permission denied, okay. Sudo cat. That's a directory, okay. So ls sudo ls root snap. Let's see how far the rabbit hole goes. Let's go see, change directory to root snap snap store. Come on. Trying to change directories. Why can I not? No, not SD, CD. Alright, I'm confused. Let's see what's in 542. Nothing. Let's see what's in 547. Nothing. Let's see what's in common. Nothing. Let's see what's in current. Nothing. Okay, well, that was a silly rabbit hole with not a whole lot of stuff in there. What I do know is that the root is the directory that acts as the login directory for the root user on your Unix-like operating system. So that's a pretty jargon kind of explanation that I gave you. Let me break that down for you. This is like the home user directory for root. That's it. So OxyMonster, his login directory is in home OxyMonster. This guy's login directory is in root and probably somewhere in one of these files. I don't actually know where. And clearly, I don't even know how to get into these files. I've never been in here before, so I don't know how often you will be, but just know that it's here. Right, let's see what we got left. The next one we have run. This is, I'll be completely honest, I don't know what run is. Maybe it's all the runnable softwares that we have here. I'm not sure. And I don't know what snap is. I don't know what SRV is. I don't know what swap file is. Sys has some systems information like devices, hypervisor, firmware, information about the kernel, information about the power, some modules that might be attached to it. Temp, we talked about temp. User. This is where this directory stores all user programs. If you were to install some games on your Linux machine, they would probably be put in here because that's a software that isn't installed on any of these places in root, but it's kind of installed in like the home, the user directory. So if you were to install like Firefox or Google Chrome, that would also be put into here. Let's proceed. The last one we have is var. Var is a directory that contains data about the local system that is written or changed based on normal operation. And this mostly includes log files. So if we go ls var, this is a place that you're going to live often, is var log. This shows you logs about a whole bunch of stuff. And as you get more and more softwares installed, they'll probably put all of their log files in here. Anytime anything happens, you know, you get a crash or you get backup reports, you get some cache, you get metrics, you get information about your security, you get information about your OpenVPN, maybe you have an error connecting to VPN, maybe you have an error with your installer, maybe cups isn't working, maybe journal is glitching out. Well, this is the place where you go to check what happened in the code while it was running. Maybe it gave you some error messages, maybe it's trying to give you some warnings, or maybe you needed an extra package installed or anything. These are the things that you're going to find in var. So that's everything. And you know what? I think I do remember what this SRV is. SRV is it ls SRV. There's nothing in here. I don't know why there's anything in here. And I'm not sure, but I think SRV is the directory that is used to contain data and information that will be served by the system to clients. So it's kind of like server. Yeah, it's probably like serve or server because it's serving data and information to clients. Server, client kind of thing. But I don't know why there isn't anything in here. So I'm not sure. The many mysteries of Linux. Oh, the joy of learning all these crazy directories. So much things in each directory. Some directories have nothing in them, so you think that it's completely broken. But we probably just forgot how to access the things in there. Or maybe there's nothing in there. Maybe there's a reason for that. I'm not sure. But I'm glad that you joined my little lesson today. Hope you found some information that's valuable at least. And I'll see you in the next lesson.